I can finish free flowing during class 6. I'm not in a rush.
Oh my god!
Wait, why is not more?
Wait, I waved to you when you were back to me.
Oh my god, he bought the pizza. Oh, I wanted to take no space. Oh yeah. Oh my god, more collab is here. How am I supposed to close?
You have to sit behind me. Sorry, the chair's for me.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, like sitting in the back of that corner.
You know what I'm good? Our rounds have insane F-side bias.
Yeah, I realized that too, which is kind of weird because Raffi and I.
Our rounds have insane F-side bias, so I'm fucked.
True.
It's an app side.
Yeah, I'm fucked.
Which is kind of weird.
I only lost to you once when I was F, and you only lost to me once in Euro.
That might be true.
What?
Yeah. Yeah, that is true. Which is so weird. So.
Generally speaking, one going
Damn, you're so good at the crowd.
Hey, I got that.
I'm fine as soon as everyone gets settled. I don't need to finish right now.
Let me know as soon as you're finished and like fully understand, you know.
No, we order on the yeah,
Some of them. I'm not gonna fill the interview. I'm gonna flow A, B, C, D.
Are you not gonna go for the old no counterfactual fiat or whatever the hell it is?
I don't think I'll get through it, but
What the hell even is that argument? It's not an argument.
It's Christian. Christian just thinks the argument's true.
We're going to
Stanford. Okay.
All right, everyone. We're starting this round. This is between the affirmative, Trent Gilbert, formerly of Valley High School, now going to Stanford, and the negative is Raffi, formerly of Harrison High School, and going to Georgetown. So be quiet and let them speak.
Oh shit! I don't have a timer.
Time this to go.
Oh, there it is.
Oh yeah, they should post. Well, after this round's over, send me your speech docs. Well.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Take a sip of water. Okay.
I affirm valid morality only the authority of a sovereign makes morality possible. First, morality lacks practical authority with over ages without enforceable system of law. If I can get away with that murder without remorse or punishment, no organ can rationally compel me to change my behavior, even when content moral reasoning presumes commitments to particular forms of agency like autonomous self-legislation, all be unmoved like those commitments, and hence morality lacks guiding force or actions. Second, moral duties are indeterminate, absent of permanent authority to resolve them. Four, instance all practical activity depends on the ability to acquire practical claims to goods that I can use for my purpose with the rules of corporate acquisition, like how to assess fair shares and values added to goods can be deduced separately, but must be fixed by judicial authority. Thus, C, F answers the question of moral theories, namely how to generate enforcement mechanisms. Third, Only the state's monopoly on force preserves the circumstances of justice which makes possible the recognition of duties to others absent of sovereign. The rational imperative of self-preservation compels me to treat others as a potential threat since there's no stable deterrent to harming me, but since they seem as a threat to, there's no basis for stable cooperation, and my abstract moral theories will always be overridden by the needs of self-defense, making ethics effectively irrelevant. This game theoretic model precludes since it explains how human behavior actually operates in the real world, which constrains abstract theories. Fourth, in order to have a stable conception of morality and meaning, we need to have a dominant creator, meaning this is achieved through a social covenant to appoint a sovereign parish. Truth is a function of language, logic and language. Connections between names and objects are not natural. They are artificially constructed by persons, since there are no authentical doctrines concerning right and wrong, good and evil. These labels are placed upon things by humans in act of creation rather than discovers intrinsic facts in the state of nature, where every person is their own judge. Persons will meet good and evil by diverse measures, creating labels for things as they see fit based on individual appetites. Fifth, the loss of sovereign ends all the other goods which are the answer morality, i.e., it returns us to a war of all against all. Hobbes 1. If any two men desire the same thing which they cannot both enjoy, they become enemies and endeavor to destroy one another. From this, there is no way to remain to secure himself there, but to master the persons of all men till he see no other power great enough to endanger him. Hereby, it is manifest that during the time men live without common power to keep them, and not there in a condition of war. Thus, all moral agents must always avoid actions that risk undermining the sovereign's authority and moving closer to state nature, and even if implementation matters under my ethic, intention always consequences. The 8 point is action theory. Actions defined by the agency can evaluate intent absent action absent the intent, the aim acts in the unifier, e.g. to drink. I must raise the glass and then swallow, which have different constituent parts, making actions individually divisible. The only way to judge the top actions is well to intent. B point is normativity. Only intent ethics are normative. B, because if you help responsible things, no intent, there's no reason to be moral, because you can't help the actions being moral because you help responsible for unintended effects controls. E, linked to ethics, otherwise there's no reason to follow morality, and ethics are circular. I advocate and contend that the use of human enhancement technologies at an individual level is immoral, since they threaten the existence of the state and spark a return to conflict rooted in the state of nature. Prefer an individual-based interpretation, since it textually interprets the resolution best. The 8 point is that if a group-based entity were to use human enhancement technologies, a statement describing it would specify since most statements are as specific as possible. The B1 is that human enhancement technologies in a general context are applied to individuals, since logically a group and entity employing the use of the enhancement technologies would descriptively align more with the statement state enhancement technologies, not human enhancement technologies. Textualities are procedural, concentrating on arguments since it burdens in the round of contextualized to wording of the topic, also weighs on jurisdictional level, since the only thing constraining the judge's evaluation also means they interpret or counter-interpret, since the ethics explicitly justifies the initial interpretation. First, the mandate to defer to a sovereign demands a mutually giving up of certain rights, means people can never have a moral right to the non-therapeutic use of human enhancement technologies without the acknowledgement and enforcement of those rights. The sovereign ceases to lay a claim over its constituents. Hobbes 2. From this fundamental law by which agents are commanded to endeavor peace, it is derived that an agent be willing, when others are so too, for the defense to lay down his right to all things. If other agents will not lay down their right as well, then there's no reason for anyone to divest himself. To lay down a right to anything is to divest oneself of the liberty of hindering another of the benefit of their own right to the same. The way by which one either simply renounce or transfer their right is a declaration or signification by some sign that they renounce or transfer to those that accept it. Further, individual-based non-therapeutic use of human enhancement technologies is arbitrary, is a priori oriented against the state, means innate turns fail. The 8 point is that individual use is directly oriented over state-based use, which means that it encourages individuals to shirk the authority of the sovereign. The B point is that without the control of the sovereign, enhancement technologies can be used against the sovereign in an attempt to return to the state of nature. The C point is that human enhancement technologies use implies that humans aren't good enough and need to improve in the quo, which challenges the notion that all one needs is a sovereign. And the D point is that only the state can effectively employ any human enhancement technology, since only the sovereign can resolve conflicting obligations, which means that any reasons the human enhancement technologies are generically good are turned by the app, and the app best protects the people as they are within the state's overarching protection. One is in much more danger as the state's direct action present harm. Thus, the state builds in a world in which it fails to recognize its obligations to protect its constituents, turns and not waste any consequentialist ethics. Hobbes 3. If a covenant be made where neither of the parties perform presently but trust one another in the condition of mere nature is void, if there be a common power set over them both with right and force sufficient to compel performances, is not void, for he that performance first has no assurance that others will perform after, because the bonds of words are too weak to bridle men's ambition, avarice, anger, and other passions without the fear of some coercive power. Under B1. First, theory is grounded off the negator, not the afterbitter, because 8 times use negatives who give you several arguments. After people go on against those arguments in the 3-minute 2 hour, which I can do, but only drop the argument. Negs has a 6-minute 2 hour, so they don't need to be able to club. So I'm key to fairness. arguments because you need sufficient time to develop arguments. Second, presume efficacy. There's 11% side bias towards negative. I overcome this. Skewed high as a better debate or two reasons to presume include substantive reasons because the reasons to determine what legitimate substantive reasons even are also further reason to drop the negative and not the affirmative on the theory debate because the negative doesn't need the advantage. Under view 2, meta-ethical actualism means no negative fiat for counter advocacy. Actualism is the view that whether you ought to do A depends on whether A is better than what you'd actually do instead. In the most likely world where you don't do A, do A possible is the view that you ought to do A only if the A is the best thing you can possibly do. Suppose Professor Procrastinator is able to exasperate a view that he's best qualified to write, but knows that if he says yes, he'll never actually complete the review. He ought to say no, since this is better than the actual alternative. Jackson and Partner in reference to Procrastinator's decision to write the review possibles and is arbitrary. Saying yes is the best action, namely writing, but saying yes is the worst action. Saying yes, but failing to write. Cut the card there.
Okay. Ready for cross-ex? Okay. Let's talk about this actualism spike at the very bottom of the app. How is so? You defend individuals take action. You don't defend fiat of like a policy, right?
I don't fiat a policy unless you want me to.
So
the argument's specific to neg fiat.
No, I understand that. So since you do not fiat something, presumably the neg does not fiat anything either. Why does saying a certain thing is moral? Like reading a counterplan or something.
You can make that argument in the one.
I know I can make it. I want to know your answer.
My argument is that you can't fiat solvency from your counter advocacy.
But if there's no fiat involved, because I'm just making a moral obligation, why is this argument?
Your moral obligation has no solvency.
What? That doesn't make sense. So if I say the status quo is better than the affirmative, or if I say we should
let's say if you read a pick with a certain counterplan that's like X is moral but nothing else is immoral, then we're not going to presume that it's some fiated implementable policy. It's just like some social
if we're not discussing policies to begin with, why is this relevant?
What do you mean?
This is about fiat. I'm not reading
if you agree that we're not talking about an implementable policy, then it doesn't seem like a problem.
Great. So you will not extend this against a pick if I do not defend fiat.
I will extend to say you don't have solvency on the pick.
Okay, that's fine. Let's talk about your contention. Read to me a single line in your one contention card that actually discusses anything about human enhancing technology.
Two contention cards, but it's more the implications from the card.
Well, I think neither of them say anything about the topic.
The Hubs 2 analysis is talking about acknowledgement and enforcement of rights, and I say you can't have a moral right.
Okay, read to me a line in the card that says human enhancing technology.
So Hobbes 2 says that you give up rights.
Yeah, read me a line that says human enhancing technology.
Given that we have a big box of general obligations, and then we have a smaller box that constitutes human enhancement technologies, and talks about human enhancement technologies.
Read me a line that says human enhancing technology.
The card's not about the topic.
No, I'm glad we agree. Yeah. Let's talk about, you say it's about rights. Where do you show that human enhancing technology is a right? Because this is just some generic Hobbes card that you cobbled together about rights. It has zero to do with anything about HETs.
Well, first, I agree that it's not a right. I say it's moral. Second, I would say that to have access to something and prove a moral claim, that would imply some kind of sense of moral rights, because only agents that have a certain right can apply moral status to any
the framework, what stops the state from just like carrying out like genocide? Like, what would your framework do to condemn?
The state stops itself.
So Nazi Germany, we just sit back and let that happen because the state will stop itself?
That state imploded on its own.
After killing 6 million people. After killing 6 million people, what internal checks are there in your framework to stop that from happening?
So there are a few answers to that. The first is that the state of nature is far worse. That genocide was caused by people, not the state intrinsically, which means that that impact happens in anarchy nonetheless. The second thing is that the sovereign naturally creates a check back on that. What stopped Nazi Germany was other sovereigns that intervened, which wouldn't happen in anarchy. Hitler would get away scot-free.
You discuss individual level. So do you defend like all individuals just abandon HETs, or what does it mean for it to be an individual?
It's not a fiat policy.
So you defend that individuals should not be doing it.
I say that it's immoral for them to use human enhancement technologies. They should defer to the sovereign.
A 3-off and case. I'll send it out.
Hold on, we gotta.
Oh, okay.
I'll
give some time to. Yeah.
All right. So
I'll just send it.
If you all have any questions for the affirmative debater about any of his arguments, this is the time to ask them. Like these questions can be literally, what was the standard? That's a good question, Trent. You should answer
I don't think there is a standard text, to be honest with you. The argument is just that we necessarily need to take actions back. Or the closest thing to a standard text is, thus all moral agents must always avoid actions that risk undermining the authority or the sovereign's authority and moving closer to the state of nature. So you could think of the standard as just avoiding the undermining of sovereign authority and avoiding the state of nature.
Any other questions? That was what Raffi was asking about.
Oh, yeah. I defend the sovereigns that stop totalitarian governments.
No other questions about what this affirmative case said? I mean, now's the time to ask it. If you didn't understand, it's going to be...
What do you mean? I say that individuals shouldn't use it. It's not really. It doesn't really matter who else uses it, but it's directly opposed to. I create the distinction between individual use of human enhancement technology and group enhancement technology. So, like, if the state creates super soldiers, I don't say that's immoral, right?
What is the thesis of the ask contention?
The thesis of the act contention. Well, it's hard to divide. Well, I mean, the contention like tagline is that the use of human enhancement technologies at individual level threatens the existence of the state and sparks a return to conflict-ridden the state of nature. The arguments are one that you give up rights, which entails giving up the right to human enhancement technologies, and then there are 4 arguments underneath Hobbes 1, and then Hobbes 2, that was Hobbes 2, and then Hobbes 3 says that the state has an overarching duty to protect its people, and that best protects people. Did you email it?
Yeah, you know.
All right, everyone.
One sec.
I just read really tiny. Probably not a good idea. Because I can't read something.
Rob, you ready?
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good.
You have it?
Or you said it was 3 off?
Yeah, 3 and then case.
Oh, good. 3.
Okay.
Everyone.
Is everyone good? 3 off, then case.
Let me
On
label
case,
my
it'll be
first.
straight down.
Off 1.
Or actually, I guess the underview stuff
Off
first.
2. Off 3.
And then room for all of your 1 hour offs.
Otherwise, it gets way confusing. Because usually these debates I have theory shells all over the place.
Okay.
I don't usually initiate the shells. I'm going to clarify that.
You ready?
It's usually this kid.
What do I do?
I said you're usually the one to initiate theory. in
Yeah,
these
right.
debates.
You had like 3 1 hour shells against me every time we debate. Okay. So everyone's good?
That's true, actually.
Lawrence?
Yeah.
The utility to standard is maximize the expected well-being, prefer one epistemology, non-natural moral facts are epistemically inaccessible. Papanow 07. Physical facts do natural cause, moral facts less physical range that are inaccessible. Have the physical world, this epistemic consequences and knowledge, physical processes involving sense and cognitive systems, physical facts influence physical world, then we have knowledge over them. Second, moral reason is based on consequential justifications, even if deontological theories are true. Greeno 2. One subject balancing rights and obligations speaking to deontological languages. One finds oneself balancing rights on both sides by asking, rather will it safe to save one human life? And then one's underlying theories, consequences, even with deontological gloss. Second off, the birth control counterplan text. The non-therapeutic use of birth control is moral, and the non-therapeutic use of human enhancement technologies is immoral. This is human enhancing technology widely used now. Stern 13. Medical technological innovation made stronger, faster, smarter. Most of us have bodies already been enhanced in society. Concept of feminist issue from the start. Women's advocates have hope for oral contraceptive for women as well. Estrogen in pill form hinders to reach the egg, fertilized egg from implanting in the uterus and prevents ovulation. 80% of women in the United States have used the pill. Birth control is key to stop overpopulation, even if it fails. It saves the lives of tons of women in poor countries. Walsh 12. Everyday android women die of medical cause after giving birth. 99% of maternal deaths occur in the developing world. Increasing contraception access would have the impact of reducing population growth, especially in poorest and most crowded nations, which is pressure on the environment and the economy. Unchecked population growth, creeping threats to human health. Population past the 7 billion mark. 50 species move extinction every single year. Extinction brink now. Even if it falls short, it'll cause human animal suffering. Mountain 11. The world's population reached 7 billion people by the end of this century, top 10 billion. Overpopulation, overconsumption, root-cause survival destruction of our planet. We are drowning species, extinct from wildlife habitat, and undermining basic needs of life at unprecedented rates. Species have been wiped out. Isn't top on ourselves, living on the planet. This turns case. First, moral uncertainty implies we should solve extinction. Bostrom 1. Moral uncertainty just distracted. Our present might be confused. So, look, I'm kind of big a win in the future. We're inserting. We should recognize values are built to recognize value in the future, ensuring future humanity increases future values. Second, birth control link turns the entire alpha. It's a way of the government to means of limiting the population, which gives the government more and more control over citizens, which expands the sovereign power. Use epistemic modesty for framework debate. It's a question of probability of the theory multiplied probability of the actions value under the theory itself. This counts possibility of being incorrect by the theory. Christensen. We are fallible thinkers, correct moral errors, rational, let people be affected by the evidence that epistemic mistakes by peaceless doctor after reaching competent diagnosis comes to realize sober clinicians reach confident diagnosis and being highly rational to maintain undiminished confidence diagnosis. Third off is the Hobbes race critique. The Hobbesian philosophy is race exclusion of people based on savagery, has racial overtones. He also justified slavery. FIP16. Hobbes implied things like Southern Americas. He thought they were lesser. Hobbes said servants have implicit the contract with the master. Master Hobbes believes contracts valid even the by conquest. Hobbes is slave free to be there. Hobbes justified slavery. That's a voting issue and outweighs the F on 2 levels. First, ignoring the racist foundation of white supremacy causes a flawed epistemology. Leonardo O2. Whites mobilize privilege, migrants race privilege to essential unit of analysis, race functions through logical rationalization, discussing race never easy to express in classroom conditions, Platonist reads into feel good solidarity without dissent, white nation feels must be concerned, mistake the world as partition allows white psyche to speak out against slavery long ago rather than live today. Second, they can't, this includes the entire app because I agree with the entire app except for their representations. We can endorse the app without their notion of political philosophy. Now, the case. Okay. The very bottom of the app, they say meta-ethical actualism. The second interview with Jones and Parchit, one cross-ex roasted him on this. It shows the neg's not fiat advocacy. Rather, it's a question of moral obligation. Means that there is no fiat involved because it's a question of what's good and bad. It means I can assume I get solvency of things that are based on what actually occurs. Second, empirically not true. We can often say things are good or bad. For example, I can say grocery store versus counterpoint go to like Burger King, which would we compare two actions against each other, which means there's a way to compare impacts non-arbitrarily, which solves now the framework. Okay. Overreach to the framework first. The framework reflexively fails. People would never join a state. They would give it absolute power. If people were joining a Hobbesian state, they would never have any rights whatsoever. They would never join the state in the first place. Means that it is incoherent, can't be applied against itself, and would justify terrible things. Second, both cons and contracts mean util. They would join contracts that give them more rights. Paragraph 11. The Kantian formula of principles people would choose to rationally choose. Principles everyone might accept. Principles universal acceptance was things like impartial. Reason implying sense everyone accept principles. They think the other way. Everyone would have the strongest partial reason to do so. These are principles people would want to accept, would have the reason to choose. 3, political philosophy must be consequentialist. Policy justifying human trade-offs, non-viable goals means all the reasons why the state would join contracts justifies my side. Pedo 2. Inviolability is the strongest importance to human beings that I show. They instead ought to honor contracts in a sense where we the best minimize violations. It is not sure states should treat principles rather constraints rather than goals. People enjoying non-violation of rights important than they treat non-violation as rights in anyone's hands. Constraints out of the state like they promote non-domination. Fourth, we have an intrinsic desire to preserve well-being, minimize pain. In the state of nature, we would justify states that give us rights. Nagel 86. Pleasure is good, pain is bad, no matter who's. Everyone takes avoiding pain and promotion of pleasure. It's a big reason for action. It at least possible for putting my hand on a hot stove. People have involuntary reaction to actions, motivated to avoid pain, effective reason to avoid danger. Now, the line by line, the first 2, justification, metaphors, system, and resolving issues, one that commits the fallacy of origin. There's no reason why it's intrinsically valuable, rather just that it's a starting point. He is not one why action matters in the first place. Second, util hijacks us anyway. It's the reason we want to join a state to preserve our well-being. Pain is bad. That's why we join a state. Otherwise, we didn't reason to avoid the state of nature. The third justification about duties to the other. The NC explains those types of duties by ensuring all people are respected equally. Otherwise, we would just kill each other. The state of nature. We want to avoid pain, which is what the NC justifies. The fourth justification, parish by social meaning. Empirist doesn't explain this better though, because it explains how we know things. For example, I know pain is bad because I touch a stove myself, which means that I explain the reason why it's derived in the first place. The fifth justification about war being bad, its impact justified. It appeals to a higher order ethical theory like the one to explain why war is bad, which means it presupposes the NC. Now, they say intentionality is good, but all action of good intentions, only consequences resolve morality. Porter 96. The doctrine double effect would relate anything else in any action would affect another person. What I mean is, not living, not poisoning the entire household. Every action has some type of good at which the agent is voluntarily seeking. Mark the card it's seeking. Skip the next arguments now. Group the app offense. 1. Yikes, you missed philosophy 101. Hobbes' political philosophy. The app discusses the individual. That was the advocacy text. Means he gets no offense because they discuss entirely different things. Skip the next card. Second turn the sovereign dude ever wants to do. Saying it's immoral misses the point because the sovereign can take any action. Means saying agencies are bad rules out the fact that it's based on individual action. 3 turn. The app is 3 turn. The app is about expanding technocracy by having experimentation with different types of technology, which expands the state power, taking control of the industry. He says turns fail, but this is not about the counterplan specifically or empirical nature, which means that it outweighs, as is the Hobbes evidence. I can send you a marked speech doc if you want.
I don't care.
Okay.
Okay.
Hey everyone, cross-ex spec start. Which means you should stop talking.
Okay, you good?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I want to start on this Hobbes is a racist card from FIP or FIP. I think this card doesn't really make a ton of sense. Why does it start out with a rhetorical question, is Hobbes racist?
It's a discussion at the beginning of the article, and the authors...
This card seems trash. It's a blog about philosophy that discusses differing ethical theories.
You're wrong. You should read the...
It's from an article titled, Is Thomas Hobbes
You should
racist?
try reading the last line of the card.
It seems like if it actually concluded Hobbes a racist, why doesn't the title say Hobbes is a racist, not
you're
is
gonna
he racist?
You're going to answer the K wrong in the one you're going to lose, or I can answer a question.
Yeah,
the arguments... The next line says, Hobbes justified slavery, which is the conclusion of the card.
No,
there are several...
Yeah, I read this card earlier because you sent me the speech doc. The card asks the question, does Hobbes justify slavery? It's like,
Trent,
he might justify slavery
please make that
because
argument.
At one point he talked about, well, can you read for, I don't think you've read Hobbes. I haven't read a ton of Hobbes. This is just a random blogger saying that Hobbes might have thought slavery was good.
Hobbes would say that slaves remain in plantations.
So he would say, not that he did say.
No, it's saying Hobbes justified slavery. Read the card, Trent.
Can I say Utah justified slavery because slave masters really
you can
were
say
happy
it. That's
about
a bad
it?
argument.
Also, it prevented extinction because maybe they limited overpopulation,
well, no,
like you say.
Slavery caused a massive amount of pain and caused suffering. So
but my argument is, can't we portray any theory to justify slavery?
Well, no, there's a difference.
It seems like there's a difference between saying someone said slavery was good and saying someone might say slavery is good.
No, there's a big difference. My theory, the difference is my theory doesn't justify it, yours does.
I want you to defend every one of your advocacies / disads unconditionally.
The pick is conditional. The K
does not. The pick is conditional?
Yep.
I'll read theory.
I think we had an agreement before and we're not having theory.
Yeah, but this is an abusive as hell pick.
It's not abusive as hell. Answer the... Okay, Trent. Okay, I'll meet you halfway. It's dispositional.
When can you kick it?
If you read defense to it, I do not have to go for it.
That seems really stupid, right? Okay, so if I turn it, can you go for it?
If you straight turn it, I will go for it. If you put defense on it, I don't have to.
Okay, I plan to straight turn it. So let's go to the counterplan.
Please
the counterplan. Okay, so I think you missed. I missed philosophy 101, but it seems like you missed English 101. Let's just read the text. It says non-therapeutic use of birth control is moral, and the non-therapeutic use of human enhancement technologies is
of all other. Yes.
No, you don't say all other though. Read that to me in the text.
No, it's
I realize you're trying to write
the and a clause in a sentence.
Yes. Okay, so I can say dogs are bad and all animals suck. No, where does that mean that dogs are not sucky?
Trent,
I realize you're meaning to read a pick. It's just like I missed physics 101, but you missed English 101.
No, I think you missed both physics 101 and English 101, Trent. So the and in the sentence connects.
So and means except for now.
No, and means in addition to.
Can you read a single person other than this random FIP blogger that would agree with you on this issue?
What the hell are you talking about? That's a different
FIP is your card.
That is the K.
I know. My joke is that the card is so trash you might agree with me.
A counterplan is not the same as a pick, Trent. A counterplan. No, sorry.
I realize you're trying to read a pick. It's just not written as a pick.
You
say one thing is moral, and then you say, yeah, all things including not.
I know your app has no cards about the topic, and this is your Hail Mary, but the pick is good. It solves the app, and I will win on it.
The Hail Mary is that your counterplan.
The Hail Mary is you have no cards about the topic in your app.
Yeah, I don't need neat cards, so it's.
I'm glad you feel that way.
Yeah.
Let's see if the judges.
In the trash.
Oh, hey. Does anyone have any questions for the negative about any of their arguments, strategy, etc.? Yeah. Raffi?
I had the well, I was a lot of defense. I said that none of his arguments apply in the context of the state, or sorry, individuals, because Hobbes' political philosophy. Then I had a turn: the sovereign can do whatever it wants. So getting rid of HETs is bad. The third was the turn that HETs rely on technological expertise, which expands the government's power. So getting rid of HETs would minimize the government's power. And then I said none of his offense applies to the counterplan. It's a pick.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
This is a Stern card, I think. I actually should read that card.
It says that it's something that expands like people's ability to have like value to life and is a technological development that affects people. Like the first line of the card. Sorry? Well, I mean, the arguments that people should have the choice and like not be stuck with.
Wait, does your argument rely on women wanting to get abortion?
Well, it's not. Well, no, it's not about abortion. It's not just birth control.
Or like birth control. Like,
Well, no, the argument is that people should have the option to, and the app would like ban that, which is bad.
These kids are annoying.
You can just merge this. It's kind of
that's the easiest tool. No, here's why.
Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna be starting.
Do you have left?
Wow, I have a minute
No one's
left.
keeping track.
Yeah.
Oh, prep stealer, huh?
I'm not trying to steal crap, but it's a demo though. I have a minute left though. Okay, so I'm starting on the AF. Then I'll go to this FIP thing. Then I'll go to the pick, and then I'll go to Utah.
So you're doing the app, then the critique, and then
the FIP thing. Yes.
so the Hobbes race.
Raffi,
critique.
I think it's funny you carded someone and called it FIP. That's just.
Called it a- I think it's funny your app is no card at the top.
Oh, it is funny. Yeah, I think it's great. Okay.
So case, you said?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Okay, everyone good?
Raffi's one and is missing the point. He reads a counterplan that doesn't use grammatical English. He reads a solvency advocate that says most people have been enhanced, but doesn't actually say birth control is enhancement. Also, his answers to the app don't answer the two cards that I go for every time. The first is the parish analysis that only the sovereign can create any stable, meaning I can concede that util comes first, but the sovereign is the only one that can enforce utilitarianism, demonstrated by the fact that no one can be utilitarian in the state of nature because they're more considering themselves. That's Hobbes 2. That's Hobbes 1. Hobbes says that we can only consider ourselves in a world in the state of nature, which means that we are not talking about overall maximum well-being. We're talking about individual well-being, which means that we can never achieve utilitarianism. He has a couple responses to these arguments, but they are really bad. The first is that empirics explain that we know something, but not everyone feels pain. Some people can feel a stovetop and never feel a thing, which means not everyone has those empirics. Only the state can tell those people that other people feel pain and explain the sensation. Also, Hobbes 1 straight turns util extended every time. The loss of the sovereign returns us to a war of all against all. Has a couple implications. The first is I have access to your extinction claim. Without the sovereign, we will have extinction. The second implication is that a world without sovereign is uniquely bad because the life is nasty, British or short, which means that no one has any expected well-being. Also, epistemic modesty means that we defer back to the sovereign because only the sovereign can tell us to be epistemically modest. You have conceded that out of the app. Now let's go to the contention. The contention is very good. Your responses are not. Let's go to your first argument. Say that you said that Hobbes is about individuals. That Hobbes is not about individuals, but yes, it is. Nothing in the app says anything about who has obligations. I say that the sovereign is uniquely good in any sense. It is not the sovereign should preserve itself. It is that everyone should try to preserve the sovereign. It doesn't mean what Hobbes. I don't care what Hobbes would be saying. His arguments still apply. These second response is that the sovereign can do whatever the hell it wants. The first thing is that this links into your K because you say that the sovereign this logic is bad, and then you link right into it yourself. The second argument is that sure, the sovereign can do whatever it wants. I only defend that individuals can't do whatever they want, which means sovereigns can still apply. That means that is the app impact. You also say that your third argument is the app. The negatives about technocracy. Sure, the state can have those arguments, but it's just about individuals. Extend that's the most textual interpretation because otherwise we're talking about state enhancement technologies. Now you can go to the Hobbes 2 analysis that the government necessarily means that we give up certain rights, which means that we can never have the moral right to certain things. You say that we're not talking about rights, but yeah, we definitely are because we can never have a moral duty. Otherwise, you can also extend that otherwise individuals necessarily shirk the use of the authority of the state. That is the A point. And the B point is that only the state can effectively employ anything, which means that the birth control argument is necessarily true. It is not competitive, and also the app does it best. Let's go to the fifth argument. The first thing is this card is trash. It never actually says that Hobbes said that slavery was okay. It hypothesizes whether or not it would do it. It is from a random trashy blog. Also, it says that Hobbes was somewhat racist in talking about Native Americans, but he just said that they should have had a state. It is not unique to them. It says that all humans that don't have a state are necessarily wrong. It is not talking about specific people. Second, your turns necessarily bite in with this more because you say that we need birth control to control over a population, which means that you're coming into other states and saying, hey, we don't value your lives. You should take more birth control, which is necessarily going to be biting in necessarily more. The third argument is turn. The state of nature is rooted is necessarily the root of slavery. We got slaves from African kingdoms that not necessarily have governments, but necessarily plucked people and gave them to colonizers, which necessarily means that your world is one that necessarily links in more. Hobbes is shifting us away from that. Now let's go to the counterpoint. It's trash. First, it is not English. You say that all things are. You say that birth control is moral, and then you say all human enhancement technologies is moral, which means you're in a double bind. Either it is not human enhancement technologies, in which case we can permit, or B, you do not have any competition because you say that it's moral, and then you say that links into it. It's like saying all shapes are bad, but squares are really good. That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense because you started out with saying squares are really good, and then all shapes are bad. You need to say except for squares. You're missing that sentence. The second argument is turn. This is necessarily roots of Solomon. See, most people in third world countries do not have access to birth control from the beginning. You are speaking from a point of privilege where you can buy it at a nearby Walgreens, but there are lots of things in places that not have anything. Also, net benefit to the app because only the sovereign can effectively distribute birth control. The third argument is you link it way harder. Also, Stern is not competitive. It just says most people have been enhanced, not that birth control is enhancement. Also, Boston is taken out by the fact that there's always a moral risk. There's always a risk my neighbor has a bomb in his garage. It doesn't mean I should break into his house every day because he might cause extinction.
Okay, 4 minutes of prep. I'll take that.
All right. Any questions about the 1AR, the arguments, the reasons he did certain things? I just hesitate to believe that this entire room is just entirely on the same page. Yeah.
Say again? Oh, the underview? That was just to waste Raffi's time. It's not actually offense for me. He's probably right. His counterplan doesn't need fiat. Also, like, I answered the counterplan with saying it doesn't make any sense, so I don't think I need to extend it.
Yeah.
On the Hobbes case, you said that the root of slavery, like you collected that argument.
So yeah, the historical roots of slavery are like African tribes taking prisoners of war and selling them off to other people. That happened in the state of nature, not in the world of the state, which means the AF solves back any racist impacts and doesn't justify slavery; it stops it.
Could you explain the arguments about assassination with birth control?
Yeah, so I said the connotation of his argument is that overpopulation is a problem. So let's say everyone should use birth control, but there are a few things. Most people don't have access to birth control. And second, you're suggesting that poor and minority populations should use more birth control, and saying it's really good and forcing it upon them because otherwise they might cause extinction.
Yeah.
I didn't catch the double bind on the birth control kind of rule.
Yeah, so the double blind is either, given his text, it's either A, the case that birth control isn't a human enhancement technology, in which case, sure, it's moral, but that's not, the AF can defend it too, or or birth control is a human enhancement technology, but the counterplan text says that all human enhancement technologies are bad.
Did you make an argument for why the text kind of gets done with the spirit of the counterplan?
I don't think that's really a thing, to be fair, but no. I mean, I've never heard of that argument. I actually considered it, but I was like, I've never heard of that, and I don't want to sound stupid. But yeah, you might know more about it than I do, to be fair. I didn't hit counterplans a ton. Spirit of counterplan, is it?
I have no idea what that even means.
Well, it's like with an interp.
It's like taking a specific theory and
I know how it'd work. I just
James intuitive.
yeah.
It seems silly though. It's just
Yeah.
I don't understand what that means.
I will say I considered it because I thought it would be funny, but
What is the spirit of the counterplan?
unclear.
I think she means function. Like functional competitive.
Yeah, I mean, I get how you're applying it. It's like my response is a semantic I meet, and he could leverage it by saying, well, what I meant to say was all things are immoral except for birth control.
Like whether or not you can hold into your title.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is the birth control thing a pick or is it?
It's a pick.
One's both.
Yeah. I mean, picks are counterplans, so it's both. Yeah.
Okay. Order is overview. You can flow wherever. It'll address the critique, then the util NC, then the pick, and then case.
You're starting with an overview of the critique, you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, overview, you can flow on the critique page, then util NC, pick, and then case. Okay. Is everyone good?
Just realized I should shuffle the pages. Go ahead,
Everyone
Raffi.
Yes.
The only thing funnier than Trent strokes and cross-check was how bad the 1AR is. He's functionally conceded a pick that solves the entire alpha, and he concedes all the framer cards I read in the AC means this debate is a face crusher. I'm not going to go for the K. I'm not going to go for the K. Didn't ask the status. Only asked status the counter plan, and I'll also concede that I linked to the K as well, which means no offense on that page because both of us have bad representational offense. He does not get to go for offense when he says we both link to the same extent. Now the util NC. There too, you can see the justification for util coming out of here, which means that he gets no offense. He's completed the first argument, Papanow 07, that physicalism is true, and then empiricism comes first. Because epistemologically, we derive facts through a moral lens. For example, if I see something that's based on my own experiences, he has straight dropped epistemology, which outweighs his framework on two levels. Ace pointed how we derive knowledge. So even if Hobbes is overall true and constructivism is true, it's the starting point for ethical systems. Means that the NC explains the reason we achieved the AC in the first place, or how we derive knowledge. Because pointed outweighs an active specificity. He discusses individuals in his own framework that was cross-ex, but I've argued that's why individuals derive ethics through epistemology, which is I've won the framework debate entirely. He's also dropped the green evidence. It is over. Extend the second justification that even if consequence is not true, we still rely on it every single day. It means that it's inevitable. A 1% risk of the NC framework is sufficient because it happens all the time. You cannot drop an entire NC and win Trent. LD 101 now. The pick. Okay. I will concede no risk of extinction, which takes out the case cross-apps on the Hobbes stuff. I'm going to go for the structural violence impacts about saving people's lives in other countries. Overreach the counterplan. There are three major framing issues. First, use a sufficiency test. The counterplan solves enough of the alpha that a risk of net benefit outweighs. He only goes to reasons why we should fight back. Why we should have the state power, but never shows specifically why birth control is bad. The counterplan agrees with 99% of the 1 and C, except one minor difference, which means that a question of size of link the counterplan comes prior. Second, the net benefit outweighs the alpha in magnitude. He lacks a tangible impact except for the state of nature being bad. My impact is people suffering structural violence and dying. 99% of women, 90% of people die from giving birth in poor countries, which worsens global inequalities, which is comparatively worse. 3, reject everything he said in the counterplan. He has zero evidence for it, just a bunch of his ranting and raving with no warrants for it, whereas I actually give empirical evidence from experts in the field who explain why the counterplan's a good idea. He just gives random speculation. Now, the line by line. You first answer the dumb counterplan flaw argument. First, you link as well. Your app did not say non-therapeutic in the plan text call for the plan text after the round. You just said in human enhanced technology. English 101 Trent. The resolution says human enhancement. This outweighs your arguments. A is the point. The app is the basis point for the resolution, which be for the entire round because arguments are based on the 1AC itself, which means app plan flaw outweighs basis point. You can vote negative on presumption because functionally, if the counterplan doesn't, you just kick out of the counterplan. Whereas the app is bound to the entire plan text. Second, 2 in our counterplan just revise the 1AC. 2 in our counterplans are good. They're key to check back arguments like this one that lead to ridiculous counterplan flaws. Revisions are key to real policy making, which means that we solve all their offense anyway. 3, spirit of the counterplan itself is good. You know what the counterplan says. It's just because Trent knows he has no shot on substance, which is why he's going for it. Which means I solve all the offense anyway because we can go for other things. It's not funny. It's a reason why the counterplan does solve. His second response was ruse of solvency. That's imperialistic to tell other people what they should do. One, the counterplan is a you do you scenario. We don't have to have contraception. Rather, it is a choice people can make. The app would justify banning contraception across the entire world, which would cause further oppression, which does solve their offense. Second, people want contraception. The counterplan indicates that people actually want to have a chance to choose their own life path. Ask yourself the question, why should someone in a poor country force to have a child when they're not ready to have a child? The answer is no. Then the counterplan does solve the entire app. He says it is not competitive with the app. First, my evidence says that it is. It says that birth control is human enhancing. That is literally what the article is about. Read the first line of the card, which shows that it does change people's lives. Second, this is how it works. It enhances people's lives. They can choose not to have a child, for example, which of their poor might decrease their quality of life, means that the counterplan is better now, the counterplan proper. I'm just going to go for the structure of balance impacts. I'm not going to go for Bostrom. It's in counterplan text. We should do the entire F except for the ideas of except for contraception, which we should allow to continue. This is key to solve structural violence. People in poor countries often are forced to have children, which recreates violence. Here's the kicker. Trent is conceded. The counterplan link turns the app. Extend the second implication, which has been conceded, that it links to his framework when people are when the government can birth control. It can control population size, but it's key to the sovereign. You lose because the counterplan is key to expanding state power. So even if it wins at state power is the biggest impact on our util, I control the direction of the link, which is key. Now, the epistemic modesty debate is in the Christensen evidence that EM is good as question risk analysis versus what is most likely, which is key to real education because people think right away. I don't know what the hell Trent was saying in this. He says the sovereign controls modesty. No, judges control epistemic modesty. It's a question of how we derive impacts in the round itself. This is so simple. The counterplan solves 99% of the 1AC. I agree that the state should generally have control. It's a question of birth control good or bad, not a question of HET is good or bad, which solves the app. Now the case. He has conceded a 4-point framework over to the very top of the app. Extend the X in a second argument with perfect that his framework evolves into my util. People would agree to join a state that has utilitarian benefits, which means he can't go for the social meeting arguments because this starting point is my framework that was entirely conceded coming out of the 1 and C. But alarm on the his extension seeks since parish but social meaning. But it's my response. Empiricism takes it out. We know things based on experiences. He says a hot stove isn't the same thing, but everyone has some experiences, even on a hot stove. For example, you can still hear things or experience certain actions. He also extends Hobbes about the war in the state of nature, but he dropped my response. It is impact justified. Means he gets to offense. All of his wang relies on extinction, but he's no break for the impact because the counterplan solves enough of the app that the risk of offense outweighs, which means he gets no offense. I'm going for one case turn that was conceded. It's my third response on the advantage proper. That technological expertise justifies my side. HETs expand the state power by ensuring they use more technology, he says, but individuals use technology, which means that the state is endorsing individuals to use technology. Even if I lose everything else in this round, the turn is functionally conceded, which is offense for me. He's also conceded. His evidence is not about the pick, and it's a question of whether the pick solves the app. Such a clear round. The pick solves the app. He has not answered at the end of the debate. None of his offense applies. Extinction doesn't matter. It's a question of linear util impacts. So I've won the pick that solves this.
All right. Any questions about the 2NR or?
Why does it matter if the pick solves the app? The burden is to prove that HETs are moral.
Because I've won that. I've won that HETs. This type of birth control is good and should be considered. So if I win this one particular type of HET is good, not just that it solves, but as a net benefit, then I've offense.
Counterplans are a little weird in this topic, but he's reading it the right way. It's just it's a moral question. He says that birth control.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, we had a CX exchange that you probably should have solved it too. I didn't go for that argument.
Yeah.
Not gonna take all the prep. Okay, so it's gonna be going this FIP K again
then the counter plan, then the app.
Okay, sounds good.
Everyone good?
Yeah, I'm good.
The FIP-K is a very big voting issue for the AF. He cannot kick a K that does not have an alternative. Also, I said in cross-ex, I want all of your counter advocacies to be unconditional. He said in response that the counter plan was condo and they made it dispositional, but at a minimum, that means that this is a dispositional thing. He said that if I had a straight turn, he could not kick it. I do have straight turns, so let's extend them. Let's extend first at the birth control argument bites in very hard because he is suggesting that we necessarily need to impose birth control on indigenous populations and other places because overpopulation is too important and they are adding too much to the world, which is necessarily bad. He's necessarily saying that we should impose it upon every person. He's also conceded the straight turn that the state of nature is the root of slavery, which means the AF is at a divorcing point. It says that slavery is bad and that the state is how we can solve it because the state of nature is where it originates from, which means that I do not have a link. Raffi bites in very hard. There's no link to the AF. There's a turn. There's the argument that his birth control argument links in. He can't kick it. There's still a reject the debater implication. He says it comes first. Very easy AF ballot. The other thing is that he is conceding way too much on the counter plan, that it is not competitive because the AF only bans birth control at an individual level at best, which means that a state distribution of birth control necessarily solves because the state can employ birth control at an overall level, which necessarily means that it will always outweigh. He's also conceded the fundamental argument of rules of solvency because he misfloated as a mixture of two arguments. He floated as rules of solvency because we impose birth control in other nations. I did make that argument, but it was separate. This argument is rules of solvency. Most countries do not have access to birth control. There's a reason that there's overpopulation. It's not that most people do not want birth control, it's that they do not freaking have it. It is a reason that the CB never is going to be solving because he does not fiat anything. It just says that they're moral. And sure, it could be moral in the abstract, but most people do not have it, which means he is not divorcing from his privilege. CB has no solvency. I'll concede that the counter plan has a new 2NR re-articulation. He spends way too much time on it, but you know it's nonsense. So if you don't want to vote on new 2NR arguments and re-articulations of things, that means you can kick it now. Let's go to the app. The app is really good, and Raffi extends things blindly, hoping I do not notice the overall strategic benefit of the app, but I thankfully do. You can extend the beginning of the 1AR that I can concede that util is true, but the app is a procedural prerequisite because the state has to be one to employ utilitarianism, not individuals in the state of nature, because they are considering themselves and no one else. This argument is bolstered by the Hobbes analysis, which he only responds to as being impact justified, but believe it or not, util cares a lot about impacts. It means that it does not exclude anything. You can also extend the parish analysis that only the sovereign can resolve meaning and tell people that other people feel pain because there are people in society who do not feel pain. It does not matter that there is epistemologically true that we feel pain. Not all people feel pain, which means that we need the state to resolve that. Let's go to the contention of the app. It is very good. He's conceded that we can never, he cannot turn the app because the individual use of something it shirks the authority of the sovereign. He says that individual use of technology is good, but my argument is that they can use it to overthrow the state. The state should be the ones to create super soldiers. You can also extend that only state employment of anything necessarily outweighs, which means that I always that way. Also, plan flaw doesn't matter because that at best just means I'm vaguely untopical, which is probably true, but you don't say it's a reason I should lose.
Good round.
All right, so a few notes. One, you have to be at your room for bed check at 10:30. Two, these two will stick around for another 5 or 10 minutes if you have questions to ask them after the debate about how it went. Three, I would recommend that you try to write an RFD about this round. It might be a bit difficult, but that's good because the more that you have to think about the decisions that were made in this debate and think about how they all interacted and how you would vote for a team or one particular team is really good for you. The more that you think like a judge, the better types of decisions that you will make as a debater in the future. I would also recommend that you think through every strategic decision that was made in this debate and try to justify it to yourself. Why did this debater take this decision? And what could I have done to maybe better that decision in the future? The more that you can use this round as a learning opportunity, the better. And finally, let's give these two another round of applause for So yeah, you're free to go. Again, they'll stick around here for a couple minutes if you have any questions to ask them.
I think I will. You may.
To be honest, it doesn't matter to me, Raffi.
I feel like all of our rounds end up like this, just cluster.
Super muddled.